Oh, yeah? When is and half a day? It's 9:12. And I thank you very much, Senator Munya Barnes, for being here early. And I apologize, we can't start yet until there's 8 of us, so we need 6 more. So I hope the others will be coming soon. Thank you. The legislature is back in session. Good morning, senators. Thank you very much for coming in this morning so that we can continue to address at least 3 more bills. I would like to recognize Senator Tom Ada on bill number 321-33.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 321-33 as amended be placed in third reading, and I'd like to speak on it.
You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to just take a few minutes to give a backdrop on how we got to Bill 321. Late last year, or early last year, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission gave an information briefing to the committee regarding the status of available Chamorro Land Trust properties and the number of applications that have yet to be processed. And from that information hearing, we found that there is still probably twice the number of applications that has yet to be processed and satisfied than there is the amount of land in terms of acreage that's available to satisfy these applications. And so that being realized, the committee then set out on a task to start identifying a lot of the public properties that are just laying out there, which really should come under the Chamorro Land Trust inventory. And so bills were introduced and were enacted into law, which identified, for example, about over 100 acres of land that initially were set aside to build schools. A good example is for Estumbo High School. 35 acres was set aside. Instead, the Department of Education decided to build a high school in another area, which is now Okudu High School. And so that requirement having been satisfied, you had this 35 acres that was just sitting out there that was initially reserved for DOE. There was something similar in Agana Heights, another one in Dedido, and so bills were introduced to take these properties in and put them into the Chamorro Land Trust inventory. There was also, earlier this year, a report that came out from the Department of Land Management, which identified that there was probably about 400 some Chamorro Land Trust properties, public properties that came in under the Land for the Landless program. Now, the Land for the Landless program was something that was started back as early as 1978, and finally in 1995 that program was terminated. But under the Land for the Landless program, those who were eligible, and it didn't regardless of whether you were Chamorro, as long as you were a Guamanian and you met that requirement and you did not own any land, you could put in a bid for property that was a quarter of an acre for $2,500. Now, if you then received succeeded in getting one of those properties, you had 10 years to pay it off. Now, we found then that there was, at the time that back in when Public Law 33-104 was initially introduced, found that there was 391 defaulted accounts. People either just decided, I don't want to pay that $2,500, walked away from it, for one reason or another did not satisfy the requirements. And so you had 391 lots that were sitting out there in an area that was already surveyed, had infrastructure into it, and so the Public Law 33-104, which was passed earlier this year, was enacted, which would then give these people a second chance to come in and make good, because we don't know why they did not satisfy the contract requirements. And so out of that 390 defaulted accounts, there was 39 people who came in and says, okay, we'll pay in full now, the $2,500 plus whatever interest was due on the account. There were also 41 respondents who requested for an appeal to show why they should not, that property should not be taken away from them due to personal hardships or whatever. But in the process then of trying to bring closure to this Land for the Landless program, we found basically three situations. One was there was people who are already living on the land and for some reason did not complete paying the $2,500. So the person moved on to the land, built the house, and nobody enforced the $2,500 payment over the 10-year period. So what this bill does is it says, okay, for that category of delinquents, we would allow you to go ahead and make good on the payments, and you will have, I believe, 180 days to clear up that requirement. There's also the people. There was also a situation that was found in this process where people says, "Hey, I've already paid the $2,500 in full, and whatever other restrictions there may be that the program had, I've already satisfied all that." And land management said, "Well, we don't have anything on the records. According to our records, you haven't paid for it." And the individual pulls out his receipt and he says, "Here's my receipt. Here's my cancel stub. I've already paid for it." So the law allows then that for those individuals, if the applicant has actually provided a proof of payment, then that should be honored if it's an official receipt from land management. So there was that situation, and this bill addresses that. There were those who said, "Okay, fine, I'll pay for it and all that, but I need a little bit more time." And so what the bill does is it says, "Okay, we'll give you another 180 days to pay off, but you got to show some good faith and put some skin in the game. So here's a deposit they're going to be required to put in a minimum deposit of 10% on the balance that is due." We don't want them to say, no, hold this land, and then on the 179th day they come in and says, "I changed my mind again." So that's what Bill 321-33 does, Madam Speaker. It basically just kind of like that last attempt based on information that was recently obtained to be able to bring closure to this Chamorro Land Trust property. The Land for the Landless program. And then the properties then that are left vacant and available will then be transferred to the Chamorro Land Trust inventory. And those properties really can almost immediately be leased out to the next applicant on the list if they so desire to take that property wherever it's located. So, Madam Speaker, I ask my colleagues to favorably consider this bill so that we can bring closure to the Land for the Landless program and then make available properties that have since then been, people have decided they don't want it, and put it back into the Chamorro Land Trust inventory for further disposition and allocation. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Senator Tom Atta. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion, Bill 321? If not, Senator Espaldon, I'll recognize you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. I fully understand what this bill intends to do, basically just to extend the timeline in which people who are residing on the land, who have been given land at a cost of $2,500, just an extension of time for them to make good on any default that they may have incurred on that payment. If I may, I'd like to ask a question of the author just to make sure that what he stated is really what is being offered here in this bill. And
Please do.
the way on page 2 reads at the bottom on line 25, which I believe is the extension of time. It says, if the department finds a justification to be reasonable and pursuant to subsection B above, the purchaser or his or her legal beneficiary is still eligible under the program's guidelines. The department shall give purchaser the opportunity to rectify the default within, the old law says within 60 days from the date of notice that the default has been rescinded. And I just trying to, now it's 180 days. I guess the question I have in my mind is that, is it 180 days from the date of notice that the default has been rescinded? I'm not sure I really understand how that all comes out, and if he could just explain that a little.
Thank you, Senator Espaldon. Senator Tom Atta, do you wish to answer that inquiry?
The date of the notice that the default has been rescinded stands as it is. It's just that it just extends out the period now. So from whenever that date is, it would have actually expired. What was it? If you look at B, purchaser shall be given 30 days from the date of receipt of the notice to submit their appeal, and then the department shall have 45 days to review. So, by the time this bill has been introduced, 75 days has already elapsed. And so now we're just putting in that 180 to give that additional time. Let's see.
Senator Espaldon, does that answer your concern?
I understand what the author just explained. If the notice of default has been rescinded, I imagine it's because there was an appeal and the appeal won. The person who made the appeal won, basically saying, I have the receipt here, so I would imagine that's when the default is rescinded, because in other words, it's pulled back because there is no default. I guess the question is, if there's been no default, if the default has been rescinded, what extra time do they need to make good? If I could just have a recess, Madam Speaker, just for a minute to discuss this with the author.
We'll go ahead and take a session recess.
Thank you.
Just back from recess. When we last left, Senator Espaldon, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate that moment to just discuss with the author on this one. I just wanted to understand how this all plays out according to the wording. And I just want to, for my own edification, as I verbalize it and articulate it, maybe our colleagues in here would also have a better understanding, that in the case where someone who is on the land for the landless lot has been given notice, and they have come in to say, look, I will pay it, and they pay it, then that notice of default is rescinded. That's one group. Another group is someone who comes in and says, who's gotten notice from the Department of Land Management and says, okay, let me put some money down. And he puts it down. And that notice is then of default is then rescinded. And so now he has a few extra, under the old law it was 60 days to fix it. Under the new proposed law it would be 180 days to fix it. There's another group that has not made any payments. They received a notice of default from the from Land Management or Chamorro Land Trust, whoever is administering this. And they come in and make their plea that we have not been able to make payment because of one reason or another, whether it was a medical reason, a financial hardship reason, or whatnot. And if it's approved, then the notice of default is then rescinded, saying, okay, you have X amount of time. But now there is a different group of people, and I just want to make sure we all understand this, and this is what I was trying to wrap my head around, is there's a different group of people who are living on these lots, who have been given these lots, who have not come in to file an appeal of for the notice of default. They just never showed up. They now have no recourse because they never went in to appeal the notice of default. Then they do not avail themselves of this extra 180-day extension. And that's what I was kind of wondering about, because that means that those who have not filed an appeal whatsoever, maybe because they don't understand it or they don't know the consequences or whatnot, they stand to lose their lots. And if that's the bill that is being proffered before us, if that is the intent of the author, and I just want to make sure that was the intent of the author, that even those who did not file an appeal and there was no rescission of the notice of default, then they will lose their lot and they cannot avail themselves of this 180-day extension. And I just want to say that because there are probably enough families out there or people on those lots that were given to them who perhaps don't understand that, and since they never filed an appeal, that they will lose their lots. And I just wanted to clarify that. Now I understand the program. So this 180-day extension does not apply to anybody who has not appealed the notice of default from Land Management. And I believe that is the way, unless I'm corrected, that's the way I understand this bill to be. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to clarify in my own mind and perhaps for the edification of our colleagues to understand how this really works. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator Espaldon. So, are there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion on Senator Tom Atta's Bill 321? If not, yes. Speaker Wampat, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is that, as indicated earlier, there's like 391.
Mic on.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hello? Dada?
Nope.
Thank you very much, Madam
Yes,
Speaker.
I can hear you now.
Earlier, the senator who was discussing the bill said that there were like 391 left in the list who have not, either one of the way, either have paid or not, or have appealed or what have you. But then my next question is that will the department make attempts to reach these individuals through letters, emails, or a publication maybe in the newspaper? So that would be my question. So that then, based on the previous speaker, then we would not have those individuals who may not understand that they could appeal, or that they will have these 180 days or whatever. I mean, it's like an ad to say, if you have any questions, you still have an opportunity. Please communicate with us, making as many attempts as possible to reach those landowners or applicants.
Thank you, Speaker Wampat. Senator Ada?
Yes, Madam Speaker. When Public Law 33-104 was enacted earlier this year, it was very specific as to the notification processes that had to be undertaken by the Department of Land Management. And they had, from the time of enactment of the law, they had so many days to get out these notices by registered mail, and then they had to give the recipients of these, the intended addressees of these notifications, I believe 45 days, I forget how many days it was, to respond. And then from that time, the Department of Land Management then would take certain actions to follow. And that is why on page 4, starting at line 13, subparagraph K, the department has asked to be authorized to transfer by journal voucher $5,000 to reimburse them for the postal and publication expenses. And so, there was a lot of effort that was actually taken by the department to notify these people by registered mail.
Speaker, does that justify? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Speaker,
Senator
if I may,
Espadon, I'll address you for an inquiry, I bet.
Yes, just another inquiry along those lines. So if I may just ask the author then, and I think I understand how this all works, but just to be clear, is that the notices went out previously under Public Law 33-104, and within that time frame that the good author had mentioned, which was, I guess they had 30 days from the date of receipt of the notice to submit their appeal, and then the department should have 45 days to review the appeals. I assumed then that only those appeals that were filed during that time period, right, are eligible for this 180-day extension. Nobody else. In other words, there is no other chance right now for anybody else who did not appeal the notice of default to come forward and now appeal. Is that a correct assumption? And that's the question I'd like to ask the author.
Senator Chong, would you like to respond?
So that's correct. So then, after the notices were sent out, people could have either ignored it because they knew they were no longer eligible, or they were just not interested. So that's one response. The other response was they came in and they said, okay, I'm still interested. Here's the $2,500 plus whatever interest was due on that $2,500. Paid it, case closed, gave them the deed, and move on. And then the third case is the individual who then came in and say, I only, paid $500, and here's the reasons why I did not pay. And so they came in and they appealed. There was those who had hardship cases. There were those who came in and their appeal and says, no, I've satisfied the requirements. Here's my receipt. And then, that appeal then was reviewed and closure was brought to it within 45 days. And then they moved on. Now, for those who just totally ignored it, then, of course, I think it's reasonable to assume that they were no longer interested in the land for the landless program.
Senator Espadon.
So, yes, I guess I take it from that is that there is no longer any period for appeal. And so this only addresses those lot owners who have filed an appeal 30 days after the receipt of the notice to submit. And I would imagine that notice went out, at least according to this, there were 391, and out of that only 80 responded. I think that's how it reads. But that being said, I have better clarification, and I hope we all do now, that this does not open up the appeal process again. It just basically gives an extension to those who did file an appeal and whose default notices were rescinded. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to clarify it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Senator Espadon. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Tom, would you like to close? Put it down to third reading, voting file. No objection. Motion carries. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and address Speaker Juan Pat on Bill 311. And is that as amended, as introduced? Madam Speaker? I don't think that's on. Nope, not on. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to place Bill 311-33 as introduced, and this bill specifically addresses what we call as revenge pornography, and to be placed on the third reading, if I may discuss it.
Please proceed on discussion.
Thank you again very much, Madam Speaker. Bill 311 is actually initially is to raise awareness and to educate the public about the nature and the prevalence of online abuse. Now, we're also at the same time advocating for state and federal legislation to prevent such abuse whenever appropriate. Currently, Guam's law prohibits anyone from using the internet to harass another person by contacting them without revealing their identity, or continuing to contact them after being told to stop, or sending obscene material to someone who doesn't want it, or spreading false stories about others. Those violators face a misdemeanor charge. Guam also has a sexting law aimed specifically at minors. Those under 18 are forbidden to use telecommunication devices to knowingly or recklessly send or receive a photograph, video, depiction of other material that shows himself or herself of another minor in a state of nudity, and violators can be prosecuted. Most will be diverted to an educational program that seeks to discourage the repeat of such behavior. Current law, however, does not address revenge pornography, and Bill 311 then seeks to fill that gap. So this bill was actually based on many bills, but primarily on an Arizona law that has withstood legal challenges. Now, there are 28 states who have revenge porn laws as of March the 31st, 2016. There are 11 states who have bills pending in their House, and there are 9 states with revenge porn civil remedies. Bill 11, however, it's not rather designed to be a civil remedy, but rather criminal. And one of our colleagues at the public hearing had asked the question whether it would be best maybe to make it civil. And the chief of police had responded, and it's in the committee report. And he feels that from the criminal standpoint, he feels that they can hold one criminally responsible, and it would also allow them, the police, to be able to do their work and allow them to investigate it. So if this becomes a civil matter, and I'm quoting him, then it's the two parties that would have to deal with it in the court, and the Guam Police Department will not necessarily get involved because it would be a civil case, and it will not be a criminal matter. So the intent then, the way he sees it of this, is that to hold people accountable and by going that route where criminal charges then could actually be, the individual can be cited for. So I hope, Madam Speaker, then that for our colleagues, I know it seems a very simple bill, and that many others, as I said earlier, who have this in their books and has withstood any type of legal challenges. So I ask my colleagues to please consider, of course, their support for 311. Thank you very much. And last, before that, if I may, because I know that you and I had actually started to work with the district attorney and the AG as well, and I would like to request that make a motion to place you as a co-sponsor. So please add Senator Munya Barnes as well as a co-sponsor.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else? Senator Espaldon? If not, okay. Motion to the third reading, file without voting file without objection. Motion carries. Senator Dennis Rodriguez, are you ready for your bill? Bill number 282, as amended, as substituted, as intro. Senator
Yes.
Rodriguez, please.
Good morning, Hafaday, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, move to place Bill 282-33 on third reading. Be allowed to briefly speak about it.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 282 is relative to establishing a withholding assessment fee for non-resident persons to capture the 4% equivalent of the business privilege tax on contracts awarded by the government of Guam for professional services. Substantial amount of dollars are earned on Guam, Madam Speaker, from non-Guam source taxpayers. We have, for example, we know that especially the autonomous agencies, GVB, GITA, the airport, and some other agencies, we know we've tried our best to be able to compile this information, but it was really very difficult because I guess the nature of what this bill is trying to do got some people really kind of on the edge and thinking how this would affect the current contracts or services that are being provided by entities who are not domiciled here on Guam. And this is what happens, Madam Speaker, if I can just explain for very briefly, is that let's say GVB has a contract, an RFP they put out for services that are done perhaps in Japan or the other foreign markets. When the RFP comes out, anyone, including Guam-based companies or individuals, could submit a proposal to be able to bid on that RFP. And if me, for example, myself, as a local provider, wins that bid, then I would then be required to have a Guam business license, file taxes on Guam, and be subject to the taxation of 4%, at least at the very minimum, the 4% on GRT. Now, if it was for a foreign company who wins that bid, all they need to do is submit their. Oh, and plus, let me back up a little bit. As a local provider, so I would be subject to local taxes. And if I do perform services or any work at a foreign country, let's say Japan or Korea, I'm now subject to their taxes and whatever I have to do to comply with their government regulations. So, as a local provider, I'm kind of on the, I'm not in. It's not a level playing field because as a foreign provider, all you would have to do is provide a business license that you are a legitimate business that could perform business in that country, and so that's all your responsibility is. You don't, you're not, you don't have a Guam business license. You're not subject to our local taxes, and so that's where we're seeing that there is this escape of tax revenues. We know that through reports that were made in previous years, that an estimated $100 million is escaped in tax revenue on an annual basis from our government. And
Point
so,
of information, Madam Speaker, if I may, and I apologize to the author of this bill, but
I'll go ahead and
the point of information is there's no committee report that I've been looking for it and I haven't seen it, and it's not online. I'm just wondering if there is.
I'm going to take just a moment recess.
Thank you.
Legislature is back from recess. We do have the committee report. Senator Rodriguez, we do apologize. You had the floor. And just for the record to all our colleagues, the committee report is submitted, is uploaded. And Senator Rodriguez, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, basically trying to get back to how I was trying to explain this earlier, this is really about plugging up that hole, that the tax leakage on the services that are provided by non-Guam domiciled providers, and ensuring that at the very minimum, at least a 4% on the equivalent of the business privilege taxes are captured, and that would in turn, give us, our general fund the boost that it needs, because we know in fiscal year 2014 alone, an audit that was conducted, over $150 million was spent on contractual services. Whether, of course, that's not all for providers that are off island. That's the total. But of that amount, there's a significant amount of that is from these providers that are not domiciled on Guam. And this is just merely about ensuring that we capture those tax revenues for our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Oh, and Madam Speaker, if I could include Senator Mary Torres as my co-sponsor, Speaker Wonpat, Senator Munya Barnes as well as my co-sponsor. No.
Adding on that motion to add the co-sponsorship without any objection, motion carries. On the main motion, are there anyone who wishes to speak? Senator Tom Atta, you're recognized. Anyone else? So I can list you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe I understand what it is that Bill 282 is trying to accomplish. And yes, we want to be able to, everybody should pay that 4%, the equivalent of the 4% business tax. However, I'm concerned that that this really won't do it, because, for example, the thrust of this bill pertains to services, professional services being provided for all government of Guam, and reads on page 2, line 21. There is established a withholding assessment fee for a non-resident person without a valid Guam business license, which shall be equal to 4%. First of all, if I'm correct, normally a offerer does not have to have a Guam business license to submit a proposal. So if we're out there soliciting for engineering services or legal services, professional services, the offerer does not have to submit at the time of the proposal submission a Guam business license. Normally that's required to be made available at the time before an award is made to the offerer that's been selected. So I try to get a hold of GSA to confirm that is correct, that in fact a Guam business license is required before an award can be made. The second thing is that when we are soliciting for professional services, this normally goes out as a request for proposal. And in the request for proposal, the successful offer in the first round is based on their qualification, based on how well they have responded to how they're going to accomplish the service that's being requested for. Price doesn't even come into play. So then we take all these proposals and we rank them, and the one that is deemed to be most qualified and most responsive is then called in, and we sit down and we discuss it, and we say at that time, what's your price? If we cannot negotiate a price that comes within the available budget, then we say thank you, and we go down to offerer number 2. And hopefully then we come up with a price that we can afford. Now, so then if we're trying to level the playing field for professional services, I'm not sure that this, because that this is going to do it. Now, it does say that let's see. It does say that this would apply to requests for proposals. I'm trying to find the section here. Invitation for bid. Maybe if somebody can help me finding it. I know I saw it in the bill here that it would apply to requests for proposals, invitation for bid, or any other form of proposal. Oh, here we go. Page 3, line 4 says, all agencies, to include autonomous agencies of the government of Guam, shall ensure that all requests for proposals, invitation for bids, or any other form of solicitation for professional services shall include the notification. So that part, I think, is if it's for an invitation for bid, then, obviously then it'll be based on, if we want engineering services, the guy who, we're going to give it to the guy who provides basically the lowest price. And we all, I think, understand that when you do that, you get what you pay for. So if an offerer, submits a proposal that he'll do all these great things that are being required for a certain amount, somebody else who's got all the experience, the credentials, the success track and all that, is probably going to charge a higher amount because that individual's work will probably, he certainly has something to show for the kind of work that he does. So I'm just concerned that this doesn't quite hit the mark that we were hoping to hit. Now, and that's just based on my understanding of how this on the procurement side of the house. So I don't have any amendments to make. I just point that out as a point of information based on whether we're going to hit the mark with this or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Tom. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Mary Torres, you're recognized.
Zeus Mahasi, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of Bill number 282-33 COR. I rise in support because I think that we're facing a situation on our island where we understand that the revenues do not support the needs of the island. And we have to consider new ways to not only rein in our spending, but also look for opportunities to generate revenues to the government where they are lawfully and logically and reasonably available. Insofar as a 4% gross receipts tax, I have no doubt that it is only correct that a person who derives income from Guam should pay a gross receipts tax to Guam. And whether you are a non-resident doing business on Guam through an agent, a local agent, or a resident doing business on Guam, If you derive income that's a Guam source income, you should pay into the Guam system. It's a very elementary concept. And I think what it does, too, is it gives us the ability to take some control. We don't always want to have this idea that, oh, we have to give every incentive to somebody to come to Guam because Guam is such a disadvantaged location. And, doing business on Guam is a favor to Guam. We're bigger than that. We're better than that. We know that our airport ranks number 8 in international travel. The amount of tourists that come to Guam in relation to our population is quite high for a destination. There are good reasons for people to want to invest in Guam and to do business on Guam. And so I think that we just have to elevate our stature in that, saying if you're going to come and take money from us, you got to pay back to the system. It goes both ways. And for that, I think that it's highly appropriate. I also take some comfort that the OPA has been speaking about this issue. And some of our jurisdictions, areas within our jurisdiction, or within our other places within our area, have also taken aggressive tax collection measures. Although this just deals with professional services, I think it's a first good step, a good first step. I'm sorry, I'm just twisting my words today.
That's okay.
I haven't had breakfast. I need breakfast. Hint, hint to my daughter who's supposed to bring me my power bar. But I do rise in full support, and I congratulate the author for taking a first step for us to take control of our finances and generate more finances where it's rightfully due our island. Sizus Maasi.
Buen provecho, Senator Torres. Majority Leader, Senator Respicio, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I certainly, too, rise in support of this bill, and I want to commend the good senator here, Senator Rodriguez, for introducing a bill that I certainly believe is far-reaching. And not only does it want to seek to provide an assessment of 4% business privilege tax for those businesses that are off-island, but quite conceivably, I think what good senator is doing here is that it's leveling the playing field to make it so that we see situations where you have an off-island business but doing on-island work. And it's happened in the early days of the talk about the military buildup, where you have these off-island military contracts doing work on base, but yet their business license is, for example, somewhere in the mainland. So they run their payroll off-island, so they avoid all of these abilities to, or all of these requirements of paying for the local taxes, and that hole has been plugged over the years by the Department of Revenue and Taxation and by this government. But in this case, you could conceivably still have a situation with businesses doing business with the government of Guam, retaining an off-island business license, but yet providing the services locally. And I see that happening, and maybe that's one justification why these off-island individuals gets these contracts, because if you had to submit a proposal as an on-island business, knowing that you have a 4% GR business privilege tax you have to pay, or you have a business that has an off-island business license and they don't have to factor that in, maybe they have offered a proposal that's cheaper. And so in this sense, this bill also levels the playing field. And I just want to rise to also recognize some of the pushback regarding this bill and speak to that a little bit. There's been talk that if you require these off-island businesses without a Guam business license to still pay the 4%, that this is just going to be a pass-through and that the government of Guam will end up paying for this 4%. But, you know, when it comes down to it, if the government can only offer a certain amount for a certain service, that business is going to have to decide if they're going to take that contract or not. And so conceivably, those contracts that are let out by the Guam Visitors Bureau, the Airport Authority, I believe the Guam Economic Development Authority, for example, if GITA only has so much money to offer the bond council without the 4%, and if this thing becomes law and the bond council will try to submit for this 4%, if GITA cannot pay anything more than what they're paying now, then that 4% is going to have to be paid for by that off-island business, and rightfully so. That's the cost of doing business with the government of Guam and for the people of Guam. And so those comments about, oh, the TAF is going to have to set aside 4% because of the monies that they give for the Japan market, or we recently came back from Korea, from the KOTFA and the HANA trade show. And so GVB's argument is that this is just an additional 4% that's going to come off of the TAF. Maybe not. Maybe not, because who knows, these off-island vendors are going to provide the same service and just have to carve a little bit out of their contract to satisfy this bill if it's passed and if it becomes law. So I wouldn't be afraid of those comments that this is just money that's coming from the government of Guam anyway. I don't believe so. I think that those who manage these taxpayer resources are going to have to stand firm and be firm and say that this is all there is. And if the businesses want to do that, then they will have to accept it. If they don't want, then they'll find someone else who would compete for that same contract with these new terms that are going to be in place. And so I rise in support of this bill, and I thank Senator Rodriguez for finding ways to, because this is significant. This is going to be a significant revenue into the general fund. And my gut feeling tells me that good senator here has just identified an additional funding source for the Guam Memorial Hospital, which we're all very quickly to rally behind our oversight chair for health to identify any ways to identify new revenues for the hospital. And so the previous speaker hinted that she was hungry, so I'm hinting that maybe there's a funding source for the Guam Memorial Hospital down the road, since we're in the nature of giving hints, right? So thank you for the opportunity to speak on the bill.
Si Zeus Masi, Majority Leader. Speaker 1, Pat, you're recognized on the main motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Oh, and the mic works. I also stand in support of Bill 282. This was a topic that the legislature has taken a very strong position of in the early discussions about the military buildup, and the previous speaker, from Magana Heights, has actually alluded to that. We were all involved in that, and the whole argument has been specifically, well, there are the other states that would prefer that those individuals pay the taxes in their states wherever they're at. But this has been a request not just by the Guam Legislature but by the businesses here on island, basically to level the playing field. They're paying for any type of services to do business here in Guam. Why shouldn't anyone from off island then not pay for that 4%? The other is, and I think just when you really look at what the 4% is, it's a business privilege tax to do business in Guam. Whether you're for Guam, whether you're on the island or off island. We know of companies, and this was brought to our attention, where they wanted to say, well, we're going to show you in good faith that, we will then pay. So they'll assign one person here under the company's name in a small office, and then they would pay for the salary of that one person and not necessarily for the project itself. And that's their way of getting around, the law. We had asked that if Congress could consider creating legislation to allow that any kind of projects to be done here by anyone off island, that they then also pay the 4% GRTs. Many of our business people here are also saying that they really feel that something like this bill would level the playing field. But the other is that they're feeling that there should be a priority given to the business people here on island first before we even start to contract it off island. And by doing so, we know too that there are services that can't be provided on island, and therefore we need to go off island. An example of how then, when you look in page 2 in the definition of professional services, and you just look at some of the services that are provided legal, promotional, advertising, public awareness, architecture, and engineering. And every single one of these type of services were actually used by the military, but they contracted this off island. And that has passed, it's gone, and not a single penny was paid to the government of Guam. So what this bill, will do, at least in my mind, is that it would definitely level the playing field. It would definitely bring money into the general coffers, and although, and I don't want to beat the horse anymore, that although it may increase or come out of the contract, or the monies rather to pay for the contract, the important thing is that the monies will still be coming into the general coffers. So you would definitely see a dominoes effect, you see a multiplier effect, and then more importantly, it would actually send a strong message to the businesses on island that we are, thinking of what they do and how they contribute to our community, and how then now we're going to get those who are non-resident business, owners of island. So I do support this. I just wish, though, somehow that we could do this even and go beyond just professional services, and that we really should consider other projects, bigger projects, such as construction. And maybe that's another bill that the primary author might want to consider. And if he does, then, and I surely would love to work with him on this, that should be a bill that we can work on and introduce much later. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Speaker Juan Pat. Anyone else on the motion? Senator Espaldon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I fully appreciate this bill, and for the reasons stated by previous speakers, I do support this bill. However, I do have a question of the author. And
State your question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in essence, is in the committee report, one of the testimonies was given definitely by the public auditor, Doris Flores Brooks. And in her letter, she basically states that as this is a new tax requirement, the Department of Revenue and Taxation would need to develop the requisite withholding forms for the government agencies to use and provide guidance. This will require time. According to Section 4, the effective date of this enactment, the date of this law, if enacted, would be as soon as it's enacted. And her suggestion was perhaps the effective date should be sometime in the future. She recommended January 1st, so that would give all parties ample notice. And so I need to ask the question of the author whether that should be considered. In other words, give the Department of Revenue Taxation times to develop the forms, give other parties who have an interest in what this bill purports to do the time to adjust whatever they need to adjust. And so should the effective date of this bill, should it become law, which right now as reads shall be effective upon enactment, should the agency, specifically in my mind, Rev and Tax, be given more time to be able to develop the forms necessary?
Would you like to answer that, Senator Rodriguez?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I understand where our colleague is coming from, and also the suggestion from the public auditor. However, Madam Speaker, I don't believe time is on our side, and I think this is, as we've been hearing from our appropriations chair on the financial situation of our government, I think it really is imperative of us to work very hard to ensure if this passes and it's signed into law that the Rev and Tax gets on the ball. I know that the OPA, she made that statement in her written testimony, but also provided the form that is used by the Republic of the Marshall Islands, who has a similar type of requirement there. and perhaps that this form could be a template for Revenue Tax to be able to use. So, I think this is something that is imperative that we say we got to do this now. And the other aspect of that, Madam Speaker, is that as we know, the fiscal year is coming to a close. Some of these contracts may be up for renewal now, in anticipation of the new fiscal year. So we want to be able to capture those and start recouping some of this revenue now. But I still believe that there's going to be enough time between now and the passage for Revenue Tax to come up with what needs to be done.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate that answer. I'll follow the lead of the author on this one. I have no further questions, but thank you, Madam Speaker.
Si Jus Masi, Senator Espaldon. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Rodriguez, would you like to close?
Thank you again, Madam Speaker, and I thank our good colleagues for their support. Madam Speaker, this initiative really is partly based on the efforts of senators, our colleagues who are here today, who in previous years, as some of our good senators had mentioned, when we're looking at the military buildup, wanted to ensure that our government captures the revenues that will be made by these off-island contractors. And so I believe it was the Speaker, Senator Respicio as well, and yourself who were here that initiated that effort to ensure that these contractors for military buildup projects obtain business licenses here. And one of the options that we were looking at as we were developing this legislation was perhaps expanding that and just simply requiring these providers that provide professional services to the autonomous agencies to go and obtain a business license. But then we looked at it and said, we want to do this, but we also want to be business friendly. We don't want to put another burden on companies if they didn't have to. And so we found a way to be able to still capture the 4% business privilege tax equivalent, doing it this way and not having to establish a new bureaucratic procedure. And so I'm hoping that our body can fully support this and we can see this reality and start capturing these revenues that our community needs. Again, thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Rodriguez. And right now I'm going to go ahead on the motion to place it on the voting file without any objections. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator Respicio. I'm going to recognize the Majority Leader, Senator Respicio, for motions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to revert back to motions for the purposes of pulling Bill 311 from the voting file to the top of the second reading file. And
on that, go ahead. On that motion, without any objections, motion carries. Majority Leader, please.
So now that we're in motions, I move that we bring Bill 311 from the voting file to the top of the second reading file to allow Speaker Wampat to make an amendment.
Without any objections, motion carries. Thank you, Majority Leader. Speaker Wampat, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, immediately after we had sent it down, one of our colleagues had brought to my attention about a definition on the bill that wasn't really a part of the content of the bill. And if I can take you then to that specific section on page 3, line 1, on the definition of intimate parts, that since that wasn't discussed at all, that we delete it, but that it be replaced with the words instead state of nudity, because that's addressed in the very front part of the bill. And to mean then, so state of nudity means exposure of. So intimate parts will be deleted and the new words to be added. And so show state of nudity means exposure of, then continue on with the rest of the sentence.
Delete intimate parts, changed with state of nudity means
Then add the words exposure of.
exposure of. Everybody get that? We're saving a tree right now on that motion without any objections. Motion
And
carries.
if I may,
Speaker
one more
Wampat?
last
Yes,
amendment.
please.
Can you please add Senator Frank Blas and Senator Spauldon as co-sponsors? Thank you.
On that motion for Senator Frank Blas and Senator Jimmy Espaldon, without any objections, motion carries. Thank you very much, Speaker Wampat. Without any objection, motion carries. We're going to go ahead and take a recess to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you.